Welcome to Lab 29, Day 19. Now this lab is a continuation of the previous lab. In the previous lab, we had implemented one-to-many relationship, and we have also implemented how to display those data using dynamically on the page. In this lab, we'll try to implement insert functionality for our one-to-many relationship. Now in order to implement the insert functionality, we need to make changes in all the three layers. In other words, we need to write the insert SQL statement for hobbies in our data access layer. We need to call the insert SQL from the middle tier. In other words, we need to change also the middle tier. And finally, we also need to ensure that the dynamically created hobbies checkbox data is passed to the middle tier. So what we'll do is, let's start first from the data access layer, and then we will go and change the middle tier, and finally we'll go and make changes in the user interface. So let us go ahead and open the data access layer class here. And what we'll do is in this class, let's go ahead and create a very simple function here called as insert hobbies. So this function will actually help us to go and insert hobbies into the database. Now in order to insert hobbies into the database, we need two things. So if you remember right, our customer hobbies table, which we had designed in our previous videos, if you remember, our customer hobbies table actually needs two things. You can see over here on the screen. It needs a customer ID and it needs a hobby ID. So this hobby ID comes from the hobby master and the customer ID comes from the customer table, right? So in other words, this insert hobbies function over here, should have two things here. One is the customer ID, right? And the second is the hobby ID, right? Now let us go ahead and write the SQL statement, that is the insert statement. So again, what I'll do is, let me go and copy this insert customer statement from here, and let me go and paste it over here. In the later part of the videos, I'll explain you that how we can go and get rid of this copy paste. Okay, so for now, just try to follow what I'm trying to do. So now this insert statement is actually inserting into the customer table. We need to go and insert into the customer hobbies table, right? So let us go ahead and change this insert statement, so that we can go and insert into customer hobbies table. So let me go and delete this insert command, and let me go and copy paste this new insert command here. Now you can see this insert command actually goes and inserts into the hobbies table here. So let me just explain you this insert syntax here. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, insert into the customer hobbies table. So you can see that at the right hand side I have the customer hobbies table. Please go ahead and insert the customer ID and the hobby ID with the values which are passed to the function. So you can see the values which are customer ID and hobby ID, right? So and all the other things remain same. So the connection string is same, the command object is the way it is created, that is same, and we need to go and call the execute non-query, that is also same, right? So everything is same here. I'm going to just go and build this. So we have created a very simple function here called as insert what you call hobbies. Now this insert hobbies, we need to go and call it from the middle tier, in a repeated fashion or in a repeated manner for a particular customer, right? So there our build is successful. So that is good. Now what we need to do is we need to go and call this insert hobbies, from a middle tier. In other words, if you remember right, in our middle tier we had a hobbies class. So this this function here, that is insert hobbies, we need to go and call it from this hobbies class over here. So I'm going to go and create a very simple function here called as insert hobby, and here again I'll need the customer ID and the hobby ID, right? And here I will go and create the object of our data access layer. Same thing again, We had done this in a previous part of the videos a lot of times. And I'll go and call here the insert hobbies function, where I'll go and call him where I will go and call the customer ID, and where I'll go and call the hobby ID. And if everything is fine, we just return true. Right, so we have coded the data access layer, and we have called this insert hobbies into our middle tier, right? So everything is great till here. Now the next step is we need to call this insert hobby function from our user interface. So let's go to our user interface. So let me just click on Solution Explorer, and let me go to our customer data entry.aspx. So let me just go and double click on it. So now what we need to do is we need to go and call this insert hobby function from our behind code, right? So in other words, we need to go and call the insert of the hobbies, right, after the customer is inserted. So if you remember, we had this nice btn add click, where we are going and calling the save customer. So if you remember, this is the place where we are calling the save customer. So right after we save the customer, we would like to go and save the hobbies collection or the hobbies data, right? Now before I go ahead and I write or I call the code of the insert of the hobbies here, right, I would like to go and point out something. Now if you go to the hobbies table, that is a customer hobbies table, you can see that the hobbies data actually depends on customer ID. In other words, once the customer is inserted, we would like to get the ID of the customer, take that ID of the customer to this table here, and then go ahead and insert the hobbies, or else we cannot establish the relationship between the hobbies and the customer data, right? So in other words, once this save customer is called here, somehow we would like to go and fetch the customer ID of the customer which is inserted, and then we would like to take that ID and then make inserts into this hobbies table. So what we will do is let's go ahead to our customer class again. Let's go back to our customer class here, and what we'll do is let's go and create one nice property here which will contain the ID value. So I'll just go and create a private property here saying int underscore customer ID. Okay, so from this we can get the customer ID value, and let's go ahead and create a set and get also for this. So I'm going to go and refactor this, and I'm going to say that please go ahead and create a customer set and get by which, okay, we don't want a set actually, so I'll go and delete this. We just want a get, because the ID is internally generated, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to just go and create a get here. Okay, so by using this property we can get the ID value of the customer. So once a customer is inserted, we can get the value from this property here, customer ID, right? And what I've done is I have just created a get here. In other words, externally nobody can go and set this ID. He can only do a get out of it, because this underscore customer ID will be filled from SQL Server, and it is not something which has to be set from the UI. Okay, so I'll just go and build this to ensure that we don't have any errors. So the build is done. Nice. So let's go to the save method, right? So let's go to the save method of the customer class. So over here what we'll do is over here, once the customer has been inserted, we'll go and pull the ID, the newly inserted ID, right, and set this ID to this underscore customer ID variable. Okay, so I'm going to go and set this ID to underscore customer ID. So in order to do that, what we'll do is once a customer has been inserted, we'll do a pull over here. So I'm going to say here underscore customer ID equal to obj dot get customers. So over here we'll say, okay, can you go ahead and get that customer? Okay, and from that, once you get that customer, please ensure that you go and take the appropriate column. So rows and column is, let's go back to our table here, customer table. So the column is ID right? And this has to be, now this ID is object, right? So we need to somehow go and convert this to an integer. Okay, so what we'll do here is we're going to go and call this convert function here. So we'll say convert dot to integer. So whatever ID value has been fetched here, right? Now this is the object. Remember this, this row which is returned here, this column I'll say rather, you can see it is an object here, right? So this object has to be converted to an integer because at the left hand side your underscore customer ID is an integer, right? So now what has happened is, basically once the customer is inserted, we are ensuring that the customer ID is accessible, it is available, so that we can go and make entries into the hobbies table. So if you remember our hobbies table, it needs a, very quickly, server explorer. So our hobbies table needs the customer ID. So now that once the insert customer has happened and we have the customer ID, now it would be very easy for us to go and give this customer ID here and insert the hobbies appropriately, right? Right, nice. So let me just go and build this to ensure that we are all fine. So looks like we are doing good. Nice. Now let's go back to our UI again. So now let me go and write a very simple function here. Now this function will help us to go and insert hobbies into the table. So I'm going to go and name this function as insert hobbies, and this function, what it will do is it will actually go and loop through the collection of checkboxes and insert those checkboxes value into the table. Now as we said that the hobbies are very much tied up with the customer, right? So when we are inserting the hobbies, we also have to specify that for which customer we are inserting these hobbies, right? So we're going to say here customer ID, right? And this insert hobbies will be called as soon as the customer is saved into the database. So it's going to get called after the save statement here. So this save statement will save the customer to the database, and as soon as the save statement is executed, I'm going to go and call this insert hobbies over here, and to this insert hobbies we are going to go and pass the customer ID. In the previous part of the video, if you remember, this ID was flourished when we save the customer. So if you remember, this value, very quickly, if you remember, we had written the code which helps us to flourish this customer ID, right? So once the save customer is called, we'll go and insert the hobbies into the hobbies table. Now in order to insert the hobbies, right, we have to go and loop through the collection of checkboxes, right? So first we have to go and loop through the checkboxes, and we have to insert only those checkboxes while looping which are checked. So if checkboxes are checked, right, if checkboxes are checked, then only go and insert it. So over here now we need to go and write code which will help us to loop through the checkboxes, check if the checkboxes are checked, and then after that go and insert into the hobbies table. So let's first go ahead and loop through the checkboxes. Now remember that we had created one panel called as panel 1, and that panel had collection of controls, right, that is checkboxes. So the first thing is we'll just go here, loop through that panel. So I'm going to say here panel 1 dot controls. So the first thing is we'll go and loop through this panel, and the next thing is we'll say that okay, now once we are going and fetching values from this panel, the next thing we'll say is this checkbox which is retrieved from this collection, is it checked or not? Because if it is not checked, then we will not go and insert into the database, right? So I'm going to say here if obj dot is this checkbox checked. If it is checked, then only go and insert the checkbox, the value into the database. So this is the second thing we'll do. So the first thing is we have looped through the collection of checkboxes, that is controls in the panel. Second, we are now checking if the checkboxes are checked, and now over here we are going to go and insert the same into the hobbies table. Now before we go ahead and we write the rest of the code, that is the code for the insert, right? Let us go and run this application to see that at least if this application is running till here, that is still insert hobbies. So I've just pressed F5 here, and you can see my application is running. So we'll say Shiv and my password and login. Right, so there it goes. I hope that we don't have any errors here. So let me just quickly run this. So no errors, good. So let's try to test our insert. So I'm going to say here test some email mail. Now let me go and mark some checkboxes as checked here, married, and I'm going to say add. So there it goes. Load hobbies, and finally it should come here. So I'm going to just go and do a F5 here. So you can see now once I do F5, it is now first going and executing the save for the customer. So let's go and see if it works fine. So there it goes, setting all the value, going inside the save, going inside insert customers, insert customer. Now this insert is actually inserting into the customer table first, and after that it will go and insert into the hobbies table. Okay, so there it goes, execute non-query, and we have exception here. Right, so let's go and see what the exception is. You can see now we have exception here saying that invalid column name hobbies, and that is right. Now, at least currently we don't have any link between the customer and the hobbies directly. Okay, so this hobbies field has already been removed from the customer table, right? So if you remember, we had done some big changes to our database. So let me just go and open my Server Explorer here. So from the customer table, we have removed the hobbies field. So if you go and expand the customer, you can see that the hobbies field has been removed and it is now present as a part of customer hobbies. Okay, so in other words, we need to go and get rid of this hobbies field from here. So let me just go and close this application here. So the first thing is, I should actually get rid of this hobbies from here itself. So let us go and start fixing this. So from here also we need to go and remove the hobbies field. We need to go and remove this thing from here. Right. Let's go and compile this. Actually now it will again crash because this insert customer does not have that hobbies variable now. So it's going to go and crash at a lot of places. That's fine. Oh, it's only at one place, so that's good. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say yes. I don't have this hobbies property here, and frankly, the hobbies currently is really not part of this customer class, right? So let's go ahead and remove this from here as well, because it isn't a part of this now anymore. Some more errors here, that is fine. Let's go and remove this. Remember, now hobbies is a different class altogether, right? So hobbies does not exist, right? So okay, I'm going to go and comment this update code. You can see that the update code is also using the hobbies variable, right? So we'll just go and comment this, so that we'll fix this later on. Let's try to first complete the insert part. Lots of errors, so let's go and start fixing them now. We have started getting into problems now. Vid29 preview, this hobbies is not needed here. We will not be setting the hobbies to the customer class anymore now. So build again errors, no problem, not needed. Fix, let's fix it. Okay, not needed. That's how the programmer's life is, fixing defects. So let me just go and fix this. Great, so I'm going to go and just build this completely now. I hope that we will not have any errors, and that's good. So you can see succeeded, everything is fine. So now let's go ahead and run the application again. So I've done F5 here. So we hope that now we should be able to go and insert the customer. So again, let me just put the password, the username. So this runs fine. Let's again try now. Test. Email address, mail, reading, swimming, married, add. So till here it is fine. Let's do F5 and here we go. So let's now go step by step. Go inside the save. Let's go inside insert customer. Now before we execute the command, let's see that if our command is proper. So quick watch. Let me just go and once check if this command is okay. Control C. Let me just put it in a notepad. And the email address has a single quotes. This is fine. Mail. So looks like everything is fine. So this should really execute. See, this is the way you go and see that if before executing the code, right, if your SQL syntaxes are proper, right. So it's just one debugging technique which you learn over a period of time. So now I'm going to do execute non-query. I hope that it should not create problems. So that is nice. So you can say execute non-query has run successfully. It is true. It comes out, closes the connection, runs the finally, and you should now see that even the now that this customer has been inserted into database, we have to ensure that the customer ID is also filled, right? So that we can go and insert the hobbies. So the recently inserted customer, that is test, it will have a auto incremented customer ID generated, right? So that ID we need to go and fill over here. So you can see that this statement over here gets a customer and sets the ID value. So I'm going to just go and fire this, and you can see that the recent ID is 49. So that is good. We can go and check that into the database once to see that if really this customer has been inserted or not. So if I just say show table here, I should see the test added with the 49 value. So you can see this test over here with the 49 ID value. So that's good. So we come out now. Okay. And now it is time to go and save the hobbies, right? So we go inside the inside the insert hobbies function here. Now on the UI side, we have clicked on certain checkboxes here. You can see that we have clicked on reading and we have clicked on swimming, right? So now that we are looping through these checkboxes, we should find the reading and swimming to be checked, right? So let's see if that is there or not. So I'm going to go and start with the for each loop. Oops, there is some errors here, and let's see those errors here. So it says that unable to typecast this controls into a checkbox. Okay, that's a good error. Let me just explain you. So let me just go and stop the application here. Now that error which you saw was a typecast error. Now when we talk about panels, right, panels can have any kind of controls, right? It's a collection of controls. So it can have text boxes, it can have labels, it can have literals, it can have anything. And what we are doing here is we are saying that okay, go and loop through these controls, and we are assuming that it will have only checkboxes. But probably no, now currently this controls collection also has something more than checkboxes. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to go and say that okay, go to these controls but loop as an object, as a general object, so that we don't get that typecast error. Okay, and then once you're looping, right, after that, after you looped it, right, I'll say here okay, is this object a checkbox? Okay, if he is a checkbox, then go ahead and do things. So in other words, now if he is a checkbox, if obj is a checkbox, right, then please go ahead and do the typecasting. So I'll say a checkbox, o checkbox is equal to checkbox of obj. Okay, and then here I can say now o checkbox dot checked. Now due to this, what's happening is we are going and looping through these controls as a general object. So we are saying that okay, we are looping through you, and we understand that you can have tables, you can have text boxes, you can have literals, you can have checkboxes. So I'm just going and looping through you, but I am only concerned with checkboxes. So once I loop, right, I'll first check if this object is a type of checkbox. If it is, then go ahead and please typecast this object into a proper checkbox object, so that we can check if this checkbox is checked or not. Okay, So let's go and build this. I hope that we'll not get an error now, and we should be able to go inside this if condition here. So let me go and run this application. So their application is running. I put the username and password. So let me just click on the login, and let me just go and put test 1 2 3. You can see that the test data is getting inserted, but it is not inserting the hobbies, right? So I'm going to just say a test 1 2 3 here, just some new name, so that we do not get confused with the old records. Well, there is an old record test 1 2 3. I'll just make it test X must be reading, mail, swimming, married, at. Right. So there we go, and let's do F5. We are inside the insert hobbies now. We have clicked on two checkboxes here, reading and swimming. So I'm just going to go here, panel controls. You can now see that he is allowing me to loop through the controls collection. Why? Because now I'm looping it using a general object. Previously I was looping it as a checkbox, and as we said, that controls can have not only checkboxes, they can have some other things as well, right? So let's see if the first element inside the controls is a checkbox. You can see it is not, and that's why it was creating a problem. That's fine. Now let's go ahead with the second element. Is the second element a checkbox? Yes, it is. And I have just we have just got hold of the checkbox. You can see the checkbox reading is true. That is really nice. So yes, the reading is true. Okay, and after that, let's go ahead and check the other checkboxes as well. So this one is swimming, and yes, swimming is also checked to true. And if you see your screen, yes, it is also checked to true, and that's right. Let's look at the other checkboxes, just to test that if this thing works or not. So now this one is writing. You can see that writing is false, and that is right. It is false. It is not checked currently. Right. So great. So in other words, our code is now perfectly working. Now the last step, what is remaining here is that we need to go and insert, this checkbox value, or this checkbox value inside the hobbies table, right? So now let's go ahead and create the object of the hobbies class, and we'll say here obj hob.insert hobby, and over here now we'll first pass the customer ID. So this customer ID is nothing but the customer ID which is passed to this function here, comma, and we'll say here convert.toInt, and over here we'll just pass the ID of the checkbox. Now if you remember, right, when we loaded the checkbox, right, if you remember, when we actually loaded the hobbies checkbox object, we have set the hobby ID dynamically to the checkbox ID, right? So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set the same value to the insert hobby function. So the customer ID just comes from here, and then finally this hobby ID is nothing but the checkbox ID, right? So great, this is looking good. So if I now go and run this, I'm going to do a F5 here. So there my application is running. So let me just go and give the user ID and password. So I'm going to say here test shiv s@yahoo.com, mail. Let's say the hobbies are reading and writing, let's say, okay, married, add. So there it goes here, 5. So it goes here. This is a checkbox. Yes, this is a checkbox. And here you can see now this is the customer ID, and this ID is 1. So because it is checked, and 1 is nothing but actually reading. Okay. So let's go inside now, and over here now he will go and insert this hobbies data into the customer hobbies table. So execute non-query, looks fine, connection close, coming out. In the same way, we will go and check the other checkboxes. Now the other checkbox which is checked is the writing. That's right. So writing is checked here. So even that goes in, inserted, fine. And good. So if I now go to our database to see that if really this data has been inserted or not, so let me just go to View, Server Explorer. Let's go and check if this data has been inserted or not. So show table data. So you can see this test shiv has been inserted here, and you can see the record is 52 with ID. So if I go to my customer hobbies over here, you can see that 52 has two entries here, 1 and 3. And if you go and open the hobby master here, so 1 is for reading and 3 is for writing, right? So in other words, if you go and make a join here, if you just go and make a join here with customer table and with the hobby master, right? And if you see the hobby description, so you can see over here, just let me just go and ensure that we don't pull too many records. So you can see over here how forget about this test 1 to 3, it's an old record. So you can see that this newly inserted record, where we had inserted test shiv, he's having hobbies as reading and writing, right? So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. In this video we were trying to understand how to go and insert one-to-many records into tables, right? Now we have left with two more functionality, or I'll rather say with three more functionality. The first thing is, now what we have to implement is very quickly, the first thing what we have to implement is select. So in other words, as soon as the person goes and goes and selects a record, we should go and appropriately fill the customer records as well as the hobbies record, right? Second is, we have to implement update and delete. So we have three more functionalities: select, update and delete. So very quickly, what is remaining now here is, specifically from the one-to-many relationship aspect, is first is, as soon as I click on the select, right, I should be able to go and display the customer record, as well as I should be able to go and go and select the appropriate hobbies for the respective customer, right? So we have to go and display the one-to-many relationship here. Second is, we have to go and implement update as well as delete, right? So in the coming up videos, what we'll do is we'll try to implement first select, and then we'll go and try to implement update and delete.